Well, welcome everybody. I am going to share some thoughts today with Donna Johnson about the world that we live in and the conditions that we face. In my lifetime, I have never remembered a time that is more intense than right now. It's a number of things. And we have the coronavirus, which is of concern to everybody. We have the local or the political scene going on. And no matter what side you're on, it seems like everybody's fighting there. We've got the teeter-totter stock market going up and down, where people lose fortunes in one day. So in the midst of this, how do we maintain a certain balance and harmony? How do we live life with a sense of confidence, a sense of trust, and a sense of faith, where we're not collapsing under all of this things that are going on? And the cause of every one of those things that I mentioned is change. If there isn't change in our lives, we stay pretty much in the same mood that we're in all the time. But it's those changes, and I'm not talking about voluntary changes where we decide to go on a diet or do this or do that, but the involuntary changes that come into our lives unexpectedly and sometimes ferociously that totally upset our peace of mind and our sense of well-being. Change leads to fear, resistance, anxiety, self-doubt, all of those things that disrupts our lives. And human researchers have discovered that 88% of all of our fears never take place. They're just imaginary. They're in our minds. We believe that something might happen. And that's what it always is. It's the unknown that we're fearful of. But the unknown is just as friendly, if not more, than the unfriendly aspects of it. So I brought Donna in today because she's a change agent, so to speak. She has lived in, how many homes you lived in?
I don't know, but I've lived maybe in 7 states, getting there.
7 states.
And I'm not in the military either. So.
So tell me, help me with this, and share with us your wisdom. What can all of us do to keep from going into that fearful state when something happens that's new or it's uncomfortable for us, especially when it comes to, say, losing a loved one or a divorce of some sort, or something where there's deep emotional ties, and the severing of those ties or the releasing of those ties, in human form anyway, lead us to really feel a lot of stress and anxiety?
Oh, there are a lot of components to that question. For me, first, I think it's important to acknowledge feelings of loss, grief. Those things are real, and you can't just wish them away, and you can't put a Band-Aid on them necessarily. But what a person can do is to pay attention to the thoughts that perpetuate the anxiety, the grief. It's true that 88% of what we fear never happens. However, if we're living it in our heads, it's happening as if it were real. And the thing about your subconscious is it can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. So if we're conjuring up the worst case scenarios and decreeing things, our decree makes it so for us, regardless of what's really true. So the first thing is acknowledge your feelings, I would say. And then the second thing is pay attention to your thoughts. And then the third thing, and probably the most important thing, is peace, be still. Be still. It's so important to spend time just in silence. Just in silence and prayer and meditation, focusing on those things that you know are true, spiritual truths, that you deeply believe and feel connected to.
Do you feel that a lot of our stress and anxiety and our fears come about because we do not have the necessary trust in God?
Yes. And sometimes I think we just lose sight of that, because when things are flowing right along and everything's hunky-dory and it's easy to trust. It's easy to be happy most of the time and release the little annoyances and just move on. But when the rug gets pulled out from under you, when change is thrust upon you, the human experience is to tumble into anxiety and depression, anger, all kinds of emotions that come up. And sometimes that overshadows the deep abiding trust that we as spiritual beings practicing spiritual truth have. And that's not going anywhere, but we do lose sight of it. And that's why it's important to pay attention to your thoughts and bring yourself right back to the truth that you know. This is a time when the basics are very important. Denials and affirmations. Denials and affirmation. Whatever change is occurring that seems overwhelming, impossible, that really can't hold a candle to the power within you, the power that expresses through you as a divine being. It can't hold a candle to it. Remind yourself of that, go back to that, affirm that, and it will change your experience. You know, even if you have to do it over and over and over and over. That's what you do until you move beyond it.
Well, in unity, there's a belief that everything has meaning, everything has purpose. And I've always gone by the principle of avoid fear, shun fear, hold trust. But as of the latter years, I've come to believe that fear has a purpose, and doubt has a purpose, and anxiety has a purpose, and the stress has a purpose. But the thing that is different is there's no other species in the animal world, other than human beings, that experiences that kind of stress for that long a time. You know, an animal finds itself in a situation where there's change taking place, and either its home might be disturbed, or there might be predators in the neighborhood or something, but it always resolves things in a minute or two. If you see two dogs on the street fighting over a bone, they look like they're going off to war. But 2 minutes later, they each go their own way, and they don't carry it with them. Where we as human beings, sometimes we string our doubt and our anxiety and fears out over our entire lifetime. And one of the biggest ones is the fear that I am not good enough, which has been generated a lot by religion, where God is quoted as saying that we as humans are unworthy by nature and sinful in nature. So help me with that. Does fear have a purpose? And if so, what can it be?
Fear would have a purpose in mirroring back opportunities to deepen your faith and to make different choices, perhaps. Now, there are all kinds of fears, and a lot of the fears we have, we don't even know we have them. They're so deeply rooted in our upbringing and our childhood. You know, you mentioned I'm not good enough. Another one is abandonment. You know, I'm going to lose what I have, or I'm not going to get what I want. That sense of scarcity, and which turns us into control freaks. And yeah, so knowing, that's why it's so important just to be still. Peace, be still, and know that I am the God within. Which reminds me of a story. It reminds me of a story about King Canute. Have you ever heard of the story of King Canute?
King Canute?
King Canute.
Oh yeah, one of my relatives.
King Canute was Scandinavian. He truly was, and he was king of, and this is a real person, was king over quite a bit of territory, including England and Norway, Denmark. And he was the ruler, and people jumped at his command, and but he was also a Christian. So one time he had his servants bring his chair and sit it on the edge of the ocean as the tide was coming in. And there in his chair, he commanded the waves to not come in. I own this land. I am the ruler of this land, and you shall not proceed any further. And of course, the waves came right on until they engulfed him and splashed him. And the whole purpose of that was to, I believe, to show the people, number one, change is inevitable. Things will happen, and we are not in control of the universe and the world. And also to show that there is a power that is greater than our authority, that is greater, and to respect that. So that's King Canute. So I don't know why that popped up, but I like that story when it comes to change, because we have to work with change. Resistance is futile, right?
Correct.
Yes. Yes. It happens for a reason. Fear shows us where we can develop our trust. And we may not see the reason, but I believe that even when things appear to be for evil, it can be for good. It is for good. And that's another Bible story. It's not King Canute, but it's a different story. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. So whatever comes our way is for the purpose of our soul's growth, for the deepening of our understanding, and the opportunity to live from the heart and meet each day with faith.
I see that there's 4 different kinds of change. There is the voluntary change, where we initiate something to change in our lives. There's the involuntary change, where something comes out of nowhere and it sweeps through our lives like a windstorm of some sort. Then there's the kind of change that we can do something about. If it's problematic, we can manage it, we can overcome it, we can solve it. And then there's a kind of change where there's nothing we can do about it. It's permanent, it's final, and we can adapt to it. That is one of the powers, the spiritual powers we have within us that I think is grossly overlooked many times, is we don't understand our power to adapt to whatever might happen. A Northeastern insurance company did a survey, and they discovered that people that were in an accident and they were paraplegics as a result, and within 6 months of that accident, of losing the control of their entire body, they returned to the same level of happiness that they were before the accident. This is with half or more of their body functions being taken away from them. At the same time, they discovered that winners of the lottery ticket, who are exhilarated 6 months later, they go back to that same level of happiness they had. They adapt to it. And that is something that I think we can all learn, but once again, it takes trust. I can adapt to this change no matter how much I dislike it, no matter how much I have fought it. I can adapt, but in doing that, I have to have a trust in a higher power or in God, knowing that I'll be given everything I need to make it through this.
Yes. Yes. One of my favorite scriptures is, we walk by faith and not by sight. And I think that really comes home when you go through a period in your life of deep transformation. I know I've been through a couple of periods like that in my life. And the first time, I went from being a strategic planner with smart goals, working it, and just feeling like I'm on top of everything, to absolutely not knowing what was next. Not having a vision, grieving loss. I think that's part of change, is the grieving process. Not knowing, and that taught me to bring my awareness back to the present moment all the time. Okay, right here, right now, I'm fine. Nothing is happening to me that is bad. Speak the words of truth and know that. And then as you practice that, you begin to see yourself moving through whatever challenge it is. Whatever challenge it is. and you come out on the other side expanded into the light and a great deal wiser.
Are you facing any serious changes in your life right now?
Oh dear. There's a pending move in my future. It's not 100% anchored, but it's possible, yes, which means huge changes. Once again, moving from the area, selling home, buying a home, relationships changing, the grieving process, again, is part of it. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, opportunities on the other side, new experiences, new adventures, a lot of positive. And it's all swirling around right here in the solar plexus. Yes, I'm experiencing some changes. You know, this is just the path of my life this time around. You know, I'd like to just sit on my front porch and wave at the neighbors as they walk their dogs and push their baby carriages, and I'm serious, I would. But that is not what I'm here to do.
And we're all fortunate for that.
Yeah, it's not what I'm here to do for very long.
Thank you, Donna. So we'll take those words now as we move into meditation. Take a moment to just relax and take a deep breath and slowly exhale as we're guided into meditation by the choir.